If summer heat and activity left your lawn with bare patches and thin spots, then get Scott's Turf Builder Grass Seed. Fall's cool air and warm soil make it the best time to grow grass. Use Turf Builder Grass Seed to grow thicker, greener grass, guaranteed. It contains Scott's exclusive Water Smart Plus coating that absorbs 2 times more water than uncoated seeds. Feeds to jumpstart growth and protect seedlings against disease. And Scott's is the official lawn care company of Major League Baseball. Fall's the best time to grow seed and repair your yard. Pick up a bag of Scott's Turf Builder Grass Seed today. This is the Scott's Yard.
It's time for some straight talk. Some people are big-time data users, some not so much. Well, Straight Talk Wireless has unlimited plans of all sizes, like the newest, with the first 2 gigs of data at high speed, then 2G for just $35 a month. That's unlimited talk, text, and data, all on America's largest and most dependable networks. Big or small, everyone saves with Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, no contracts, only at Walmart.
A month equals 30 days. Please refer always to the latest terms and conditions of service at straighttalk.com.
I missed a really good, obvious joke opportunity there. But the moment is past. Mike and Mike back and better than ever, presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests on the Shell Pinto Performance Line. No time to waste, no rest for the weary. It's all going on. Brady won, Lamar Jackson lost, Terry Francona's a genius, and there are 4 baseball playoff games on the schedule today. Booger McFarland is with me, and Joey Galloway has joined us in our studio as well. Good morning, Joe.
Good morning.
You were kind of giving me a funny look when you heard that vasectomy thing going on there. I couldn't read what was going on in your mind.
Because I'm not going to do that. That just makes me uncomfortable. I don't even know what they do, but anything in that
you don't
area
necessarily
makes me...
want to know what they do.
Yeah,
just know that they've done it, and then after it is done.
I'm keeping whatever it is you guys had removed.
But you don't need it.
Well, you didn't really have anything removed.
I have as many kids as I want.
Well, hey, when you get to the afterlife, you never know what you might come back as. You might need everything.
And to your point, I don't know if they're removing anything. It's more like a little snip.
That's fine. I don't want any of that.
There's a leak in the gas.
No.
You're just kind of tying a knot in the hose.
Whatever I showed up with, I plan to leave this earth with.
Fair enough. You know what? I don't know. I obviously don't agree with it, but I respect it.
Yes.
I respect that take from you, Joe. All right, there's a million other things to get to here. Obviously, all of the baseball, and we got John Smoltz coming up in this hour. We'll talk with him about that, and all this college coaching money stuff, which I think is really interesting that I want to get into. But I want to begin by asking you, Joey, a question about a football story that got a little bit buried this week with some of the other things that went on, and that was Antonio Brown and his reaction on the sideline and the way Ben Roethlisberger came out and spoke about it and all of that. Now, you were a receiver, a very high-profile and very good and very productive receiver. You see the way this stuff goes on now. We've seen antics is a word that I will loosely use, of a different sort with Odell Beckham, and now this week it was all about Antonio Brown. I'm just curious, as a former receiver, what did you see when you were watching that? What do you think was going on in his mind, and how big a deal do you think it is?
I've become so used to seeing those kind of things now that it didn't really faze me to see it. In those situations, I think it depends. The first thing I start to think of, because especially when I played and when I look at it now, when I root for teams, I want everything that's done football-wise to be something that helps a team win a football game or football games or improves your team. And so when I'm watching him do this, I am thinking that because it's the Pittsburgh Steelers, because it's Ben Roethlisberger, who's been around and played a lot of football and they have good leadership there, that they can handle this and it won't affect the team. And if you've seen something like this, let's say at the Cleveland Browns, then all of a sudden you're like, uh-oh, trouble. This is going to negatively affect the team and become a story and become something that gets in the way. In Pittsburgh, I thought, I don't agree with what he did, but I didn't see it as something that would hurt the team.
And Greeny, when you look at a guy who has a personality like Antonio Brown, like an Odell Beckham Jr., I'm okay with guys having a personality and showing that personality. It's an emotional sport. And when you play, you're putting a lot of effort on that field. Some people say, hey, just show up and do your job and catch the football. Well, guys aren't built that way. I'm okay with the guy showing a little emotion as long as it doesn't affect the team. And a guy saying, I want the ball because I can help the team win. If I'm the best player on the team, if I'm the best receiver, and I give us the best opportunity to win, am I really being selfish by saying, get me the ball because I can help us win?
When you throw the cooler now.
But that's just frustration,
that is
right?
a different statement than get me the ball. Now you're throwing a cooler. Now you're becoming a distraction. So I don't think that works everywhere. I don't think that works for the Giants as much as I think it's okay in Pittsburgh. I think it's just different situations where it could work. New England, I wouldn't see that as being an issue. But if you take some of the teams, like I mentioned, the Browns, say the Bengals, you know what I mean, teams that are trying to find their way, then I would say that's a problem.
I think that the way they seem to have reacted this week suggests that it's at least a little bit of a problem because they seem to be a little fed up with him. And we go back to what happened last year in the playoff game where he, had the Facebook Live in the locker room right afterwards and stuff, and Tomlin was upset and had to apologize for language, which I didn't think he needed to apologize for, but whatever. And now, instead of trying to turn this into nothing, the Steelers came out and turned it into something, which suggested to me that there are a lot of guys involved in that organization that are aggravated with him, that do not feel like it's just frustration, that it's just team-oriented, but that he is very individually oriented.
I think what's happened is the culmination of a lot of events over a period of time. Last year, this year, there's also a little frustration with Big Ben amongst the receivers, in my opinion. If you remember, Big Ben called out Bryant, and they had a little back and forth in the media. I think the relationship between Big Ben and his receivers hasn't been great. So don't think that isn't a factor in there. Now Antonio Brown, he's basically showing up as quarterback. When he's throwing the trash can and the receiver coach, Richard Mann, who Joey knows, is sitting there trying to calm him down, he's basically showing up, hey, guys, get me the ball. More importantly, hey, Ben, you're making the decisions with the football. Throw me the football.
It's just so funny that it made me laugh when you said that because where do we usually hear the phrase showing someone up is in baseball?
Yeah.
And just look at the difference in the sports. If an outfielder doesn't make a play in a baseball game, and the pitcher so much as rolls his eyes, this is like, a conversation for a week. Can you imagine if the pitcher turned over a Gatorade cooler in the dugout afterwards? I mean, it's just unbelievable the difference in the mentality of the two sports. But that having been said, we think that everything there will be okay, right? I mean, it's just the players are just too good.
And that's my point.
You're right.
We think because it's the Steelers, because they've been there, because they've won, because they're used to some of the things, and I agree, they are fed up with some of the antics as you go back. And I agree with that sentiment. But when we look at this situation, I don't know that this changes their goals and their ability to go out and win football games. But I think they're absolutely fed up with it. It's not like something that just doesn't matter. Right. It matters. It just doesn't affect their ability to go win.
Mike and Mike, that's Joey Galloway with us here, brought to you by Goodyear. Tires as hardworking as college football's most blimp-worthy athletes. Goodyear, official sponsor of the college football playoff. We'll get to some college football in just a minute. But watching the game last night, Patriots and Buccaneers, and it's very difficult to take a lot out of these Thursday games because they are so often so poorly played for all these obvious reasons. But I have a question for both of you guys on each of the teams. Let's start with Tampa. And Booger, you mentioned it earlier. I said before the season, I'm picking Jameis Winston to be my MVP. I feel like it is the time for him to come in and have a huge year, put this together. They got him Deshaun Jackson, so they've got a deep threat to take the top off the defense, and he's got Evans, and they should run the ball a little bit. This is going to be his year. Yeah. It's only 4 games in, but it feels like it's kind of sputtering and stopping and starting for me a little bit. So, Joey, as one who obviously covered his college career intently and has watched him now through the pros, what is your assessment? Where is Jameis Winston right now?
When coming into this season, I thought to myself the same thing I've been saying about Florida State. I would like to see him get some protection in the pocket because when I'd seen him play, it would be a lot of hits, not much time in the pocket. Let's get the ball out quickly. And quarterbacks, especially ones that are trying to develop, can't develop that way. You can't develop in a situation where not only are you not very well protected, but then the guys you are throwing to, you have to make perfect throws. So to speak to what you just said about now that he has more weapons outside, okay, so that takes care of that part of it. Now, every throw doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. He has some guys that can get some separation. And so now when I see him, I want to see the next step. I didn't I didn't come in thinking he's going to be the MVP, but I would like to see the next step. And you see some of that, but you don't see it. It isn't all the way there. And he's still a young quarterback, and he's still very talented, and he still has time.
Well, no doubt. And we also, as we're criticizing him for not playing well last night, which he didn't, we also have to keep in mind, Greeny, they haven't had their full team together this entire season. Doug Martin's first game was last night. When Doug Martin came in the ball game last night, he was the best offensive player Tampa had. You saw the running game pick up. Jameis, I don't think, has gotten to the point where he can throw it 50 times a game. You give him a solid running game. Now the play action with Cameron Brate, who's a tremendous red zone threat. Mm-hmm. You got Jackson, who's a deep threat outside. You got Mike Evans, who's a big body guy that can get you some catches. Now you see what this offense is supposed to look like. And last night was the first time we saw that. Defensively, we mentioned they were without 3 starters last night. So Tampa, although they did not rise to the occasion last night in a huge, huge moment, let's also remember they haven't had their full team together just yet. And so if you're a Bucs fan, that's cause for optimism.
Are you okay with that? Are you, as you say, he's not to the point where he can throw it 50 times a game. We're talking about Heisman Trophy. We're talking about very franchise guy. If he's not the guy that can throw it 50 times a game, then – and I think that speaks to where we are now.
Right.
As we come into this season and you add some pieces to this offense and you say, this is the time. Like, this now is the time where he should be able to throw it 50 times a game.
Well, here's the thing I would ask. How many guys in the National Football League can throw it consistently? You say, okay, I'm going to let you throw it 50 times a day, and that's our best chance to win.
Very few.
Right.
But that's the point.
But that's the point.
Is that I was saying I think
he should be
that
there
guy.
now.
He's
Exactly.
close. He's close. He's not there yet, though. I think he's close. Because if you're saying he's there, you're saying he's Brady, he's Big Ben, he's Aaron Rodgers. He's not there yet.
I'm agreeing with you. He's not there. And I'm saying I thought going into the season he was going to be there. And so that's why I'm asking you, is it a cause for concern that we're all agreeing he's not quite there? He's very good. And I don't think there's any question he's going to be very good for 10 years. You can have a very good quarterback in Tampa for a decade. The question is, do you have the next great one in Tampa, which I think he was destined to be, and I thought going into the season he was going to be, and I still think he's going to be. But that's why I'm saying this. What I consider to be a little bit of a rocky start has me a little bit concerned.
I'm not as concerned because of him not having his full complement of weapons. The one thing that bothers me about Jameis is he wears his emotions on his sleeve. And if you watch the beginning of games, he's usually very inaccurate early, and he gets better as the game goes on. Last night, he was very inaccurate early. Fourth quarter, he was pretty accurate. He started putting touch on the football. How does he learn to control those emotions early on? To me, that's the one thing that concerns me. His accuracy issues are a concern.
Well, if that's where he plays, as each player takes the field, they have to figure out that piece. Where do I need my emotions to be when I go on the field? Some people need their emotions to be where his emotions were. I needed my emotions to be exactly where they are right now. Like, I could go play football with this mindset that I'm sitting in this chair with. That's where I needed mine to be. And so I don't look at a guy and say he has to control those emotions. I just say he has to figure out that sweet spot where his emotions and his play match each other. And so when you're saying he's not as accurate as you would like him to be, that is the problem. That is what we see. And so when we see, man, Jameis isn't as accurate as you'd like him to be, well, that's the next step. And that's the place we expected him to take, the leap we expect him to take, where we didn't look at him and say, man, he's not as accurate as we thought he could. You know, in that league, Boog, you can't be inaccurate and be the guy that you can say go out and get 50 throws a game. You just can't do it and be successful.
Let me move on. Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. One more on last night's game, then I want to get some college takes from Joey. Which of the following statements is true? Brady and the still explosive Patriots offense is so good that it will carry what appears to be a less than great defense as far as the Patriots need to go, or Brady and what appears to be a somewhat one-dimensional Patriot offense, while good, is not good enough to, in the big picture, overcome what is a less than spectacular defense and take them all the way to a championship. Which is true?
I think it's the latter. I think, because here's the thing about it, Greeny. As good as Tom Brady is, I still think good defense beats good offense. Good pitching beats good offense. And for me, I look at what the Patriots do. And although their defenses haven't been great, they've been underrated. Tom Brady's got to be perfect. He's got to be perfect. If we go back to the Super Bowl, why did New England win the Super Bowl? We're going to say Brady got hot and Brady became unstoppable. The Patriot defense allowed that to happen because they got stop after stop after stop in the second half and got some turnovers. So I think, Greeny, their defense has to get better. They just can't be a sieve. Like, you can't just pour water and just drain through that. Like, they have to stop somebody at some point. And I thought last night, Joey, the narrative coming out of the game, although everybody's going to say, man, the Patriots defense is back, I thought it was more about what Tampa left on the field, and that Jameis didn't play well was the reason the Patriots defense looked good.
I agree, and you say that as if both things can't be true. You say it as if Brady getting hot can't be true to win the Super Bowl along with the defense getting hot. And so the two things aren't opponents of one another. And so we've seen Brady be perfect. And if there is a quarterback out there in this world that you would think that could be perfect and carry a bad defense, it would be Tom Brady, because he figures things out and he figures out ways to win football games. They don't look like that team right now. Yep. And so even if I wrote it down, I couldn't restate what the way Greeny asked the question, which is why you said I'll take the latter, because
the question is basically,
I'm going with B. I'm going with the latter too.
Is this defense such a problem that even Brady can't overcome it and win the championship? That's basically what I'm asking.
He can overcome it.
They can win.
They are a problem
if they don't get much better on defense.
What team scares you right now?
Does Kansas City scare you right now? Does
Kansas City's good?
Yeah, Kansas City's good.
Do they scare you?
Can Denver play enough defense that even Brady?
See the look on Book's face right there?
No, I'm thinking Denver's defense.
Exactly.
Denver's defense against Brady. Like I would like, if I'm Denver, I love my defense against Brady.
Yeah.
I love that matchup. But I also like Trevor Siemian and that offense against New England's defense. Okay. Like right now, I don't know what Vegas would have it, but if Denver and New England meet right now, I'm picking Denver.
Denver scares you?
Denver would, if I'm New England, Denver would scare me.
When we have this conversation and you say who scares you and you guys have to think about it, that lets you know that this thing is wide open.
Sure.
And so in a wide open league where nobody is just head and shoulders, then Tom Brady can get you there.
That's fair. Mike and Mike, Joey Galloway is with us here. Let's do a little college here. We got college action tomorrow. Oregon State taking on USC, presented by Dr. Pepper. The coverage starts 3:30 Eastern on ESPN Radio, ESPNRadio.com, and the ESPN app. As we look at the college right now, any chance that Lamar Jackson had of repeating his Heisman Trophy winner, which I think was extremely unlikely even coming into the season, because they don't want to give it to a guy twice, certainly goes by the wayside with another loss last night. Does it feel to you like it is Saquon Barkley's award to lose? If he plays well in this gauntlet of games they have coming up, particularly Michigan and Ohio State in the next couple of weeks, if he plays well in those games, does he basically lock up the most prestigious award in college football?
I wouldn't go that far because, I mean, you look at guys like Baker Mayfield still has TCU, still has Oklahoma State on his schedule. And if those teams continue to be good, then those would be huge statement wins for him and a chance to put up huge numbers. Saquon Barkley, if he goes and plays very well at Ohio State and Michigan and against Michigan, then he is in a very good place. But, I mean, I don't think it's just his.
Barring a significant injury of any kind, in my opinion, there are two teams that have clearly separated themselves in college football: Clemson and Alabama, and in that order for me. Is there a gap? Like, is the gap really that big between those two teams in your opinion? Or do you see three or four teams that, given the right bounce, that can challenge those two teams?
Well, I don't know that. When we watch Alabama, they've been good. They haven't faced anybody that can take them out of their comfort zone. And so as they've been physical, as they've been able to run the ball, they don't rush the passer as well as they did in the past couple years. But they have not faced a team that can force that hand, that can see, okay, you're going to blitz us, we're going to make you pay to the outside like Ole Miss used to do with Chad Kelly and the tall receivers.
Correct.
And so as we look at it, I don't know that the gap is as large as it feels at times. Alabama goes and puts up 500 yards rushing on Vandy. They're not going to do that against everybody. And so I look at Penn State. I think they're a really good football team. I look at Oklahoma and what they do on offense. And as we talk about things like how Brady can carry a team, when I look at Oklahoma's offense, I think it's different than what we've seen in the past, where it's not just wide open throw downfield and Baker Mayfield run around like ball hanging out and just have to scramble for 8 seconds and then make a play. They are running offense, and that ball is coming out of his hand under 2 seconds. And so they will be tough to beat against a team that has to blitz to get after him. So I don't see that gap that a lot of people are seeing.
If you were to predict right now, and I like to phrase it this way, if you had to bet an amount of money that mattered to you on how many teams will enter the college football playoff unbeaten this year, and each of the 3 years of its existence, that answer has been one. There's been one, no more and no less, each of the years. You look at Alabama in the SEC, and I recognize there are a lot more unbeatens than these. Yep. But from the teams that would jump to your mind, Alabama, Clemson, TCU or Oklahoma from the Big 12. You look at Penn State, Michigan is the only other one, and Wisconsin from the Big 10, and anywhere else you might look. What would be your bet right now on how many teams will be unbeaten when we get there?
I don't think anybody's beating Washington out west. I think their schedule is set up. They don't play anyone.
Don't they play? Couldn't they play USC in the conference title game?
They could, but in my opinion,
you would pick Washington in that game.
Yeah, I think Washington right now is a better team. When you look at USC, the Sam Darnold hype train is off the rails. I think they've kind of lost who they are. USC was a physical football team when Sam Darnold took over. Sam got a lot of credit, but at their core, Clay Helton wants to run the football, play action, and they've kind of morphed into, hey, let's just be the Sam Darnold show. I don't think anybody's beating Clemson. I think Clemson is the best team in the country. I think they're the most complete team in the country. There's only one team on Alabama's schedule. Two, okay, Auburn, and then if they play Georgia in the title game, those are the only two teams that can remotely give them a run for their money. Oklahoma, November 11th for me is going to be huge in Norman against TCU. And so, Greeny, you have the potential. I would say 2 comfortably, but you have the potential to have 3 unbeaten.
Well, you've bypassed some games that I am not going to. I think Washington State is going to be a good game for Washington out west. I think NC State's going to be a good game for Clemson. And I do agree. I think Alabama runs through the rest of the SEC. And Oklahoma has to play Oklahoma State at Oklahoma State the week before they play TCU. So, I mean, that's a tough 2-game stretch they have to go through. I'm going to go 3 teams come through after I just said all these good games we got. Yeah, put that aside, what I said before this. I'm going 3 teams are coming through
Alabama
unbeaten. I'm going Alabama's coming through unbeaten. Clemson is coming through unbeaten. And then we're going to have one of the other teams come through unbeaten.
Maybe the Big 12, whoever wins that game?
The Big 12 could come through unbeaten. And I agree that the Pac-12 could be unbeaten. And I'm not saying that it has to be Washington.
Could be Washington State.
Leach?
I like Washington.
You like Mike Leach?
I do. Their defensive linemen are same size as Greeny.
Oh, no doubt.
But they are so quick and fast, and they just like Greeny. They're quick. They're fast. They get through the gaps.
Greeny's not
pressure.
Yes, I am. No, I'm sneaky quick. Oh, I got quick.
How can you be sneaky quick?
Well, I mean, look at me.
You're either
think I'm
quick
quick
or
at
you're
all.
not. What does sneaky quick mean?
I don't even know, but believe me, I'm it. Okay, Joey Galloway. We'll see him all over TV all over the weekend. Thanks. It's always a pleasure to see you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful to chat here. We got John Smoltz coming up next. All around all of the pitching in baseball. Much of it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. We have John Smoltz standing by, ready to look ahead to all of today's games. Again, all 4 series in action today. And number 24 NC State at home with a big win over number 17 Louisville, setting up what should be a really interesting matchup a few weeks down the road when NC State gets their shot at Clemson. And Sports Center with Mike and Mike is brought to you by CT Shirts. Time to upgrade your wardrobe with CT Shirts, the most exquisitely crafted, British-styled, crease-free shirts that you will ever wear. One CT shirt normally costs $100, but we'll get you 3 shirts for just $99 if you go to ctshirts.com/Mike. That's ctshirts.com/Mike. All right, Booger McFarland is in for Golick today, and John Smoltz is Major League Baseball's all-time leader in postseason strikeouts. He was a great starting pitcher. He was a great relief pitcher. He pitched in what I thought was the greatest baseball game ever played, which was the 7th game of the World Series against Jack Morris. And he'll be on the call tonight as the MLB Network has exclusive coverage of Game 2, Yankees-Indians. Smoltz and Matt Vasgersian and Tom Verducci. You can go to MLBnetwork.com for your local channel listings. Good morning, John Smoltz.
Good morning.
All right, help us, John, because I can't figure out what the heck is going on, particularly in the wild card games with the struggles of the starting pitchers. And you got a kid in Luis Severino, and you've got a star in Zach Greinke and others who are just so, for whatever reason, were just so incredibly ineffective. And even in other places, we've seen a little bit of it. What have you seen as you've watched it?
Yeah, well, if you ask managers, they hate that game because it's a game where there's no patience and the rope is very short to go to the pen. And because of the wild card format, we run the risk of these kind of games playing out. I'm not a fan of it. I know the TV viewing is probably a fan of it, but as a player, you can't like that one game determines your 162 games of series. So having said that, Severino, for me, I kind of got crushed all week suggesting he shouldn't start that game, and they would look at me like, oh, man, that's your best starter. Why wouldn't you start him? Well, the Yankees bullpen was going to be a major player in that game anyways, and he had never played or started in a postseason game, and here he's going to start a postseason, basically, version of a Game 7. It worked out for the Yankees. It still worked out for the Diamondbacks. But what I always say is the wild card game, you got to kind of trick what it's pretty much presented to be, and that's give you a disadvantage against the next team. And that's what happened to the Diamondbacks going in against the Dodgers. They had to use 2 starters, and it puts them at a disadvantage going into facing one of the better teams in the National League when, if they didn't have to use 2 starters, they would have had an equal, I thought, opportunity to win that series.
And so instead, today in Game 1, as you mentioned, a little bit shorthanded, they'll go up against the great Clayton Kershaw. And John, he is, in the regular season, he's been about as good as any pitcher has ever been, but his struggles in the postseason are well documented. And that's certainly, he's not the only one. We've seen a lot of pitchers who've not been at their best in the playoffs. You were one who generally was. What do you see when you see that? What do you attribute those struggles?
He's in a different planet, and it was really one team that kind of had his number, the Cardinals. And when I say he's in a different planet, every game he pitches is like a postseason game because he's supposed to win every game, and he's been such an incredible pitcher for a regular season kind of historics, if you will. And when he gets to the postseason, I think people sometimes, and maybe the player sometimes thinks, I got to be better. Well, he doesn't have to be better, and he doesn't have to carry his team any more than he does in the regular season. I think he's learned that through some of his experiences because he's much like what Greg Maddux was when you put up those kind of numbers in the regular season. People just expect, well, gosh, he's going to do that every single game in the postseason. And the opponents and the batters face him in a different way than they would in a regular season game. So I think he'll be fine. I've always said if you give Clayton Kershaw another 7 starts in the postseason, watch what he does.
John, I've often said that the difference between the regular season sport and the postseason sport, really in any sport, is the mindset of the athlete. Did you find yourself, when you went from regular season to postseason, that your mindset changed? And if so, how did that affect you?
Oh, 100%. I loved it. I would have given anything to give up about 30 more opportunities in the regular season in my career to get those opportunities in the postseason. You got to want it, but you can't want it so bad that it causes your mind and heartbeat to race at a level where the game goes too fast. You've got to literally be able to slow the game down and not be afraid of the moment or be afraid of being the GOAT. And I think those are 2 components that don't exist for a lot of guys at times because, let's face it, in the regular season, you go through a series and you're 0 for 7 as a hitter, nobody cares. You go 0 for 7 in a postseason, they're asking you what's wrong. Same thing as a pitcher. You get asked questions before you start in the postseason. You would never get asked in the regular season. There's so many more things to think about. You have to silence the noise. You have to not get caught up in the moment of, we just lost Game 1, now what? And I loved everything that came with the postseason, so much so that I pitched it completely different. And to put it in kind of perspective, every inning in the postseason for me was like pitching 3 innings worth in the regular season. The adrenaline, the attention to detail. I could have never pitched 18 postseason games. I couldn't have pitched a postseason game like 18 regular season games. I would have never made it through the season. So that's how different it was for me to get through a regular season start versus a postseason start.
Mike and Mike, John Smoltz with us. As mentioned, they'll have exclusive coverage tonight on MLB Network of Game 2 of Yankees-Indians. And so with that thought in mind, John, what did you think of Terry Francona's decision to start Trevor Bauer in Game 1 before the game was played last night?
I couldn't. I'll be honest. I looked at Terry, and I have a lot of respect for Terry, and he pulled it off. I don't. He even said, "I'm surprised so many people are asking me this question," and I think the reason he's surprised is he does have a lot of confidence in how good Bauer has been in the second half. But I'm telling you, you ask 1,000 people in Cleveland, you got 1,000 Corey Klubers, and it's not disrespect to Bauer. It's such a psychological difference when you hear the news, like what. And I think what he did, and obviously he didn't, as everyone knows, Terry doesn't do anything or the organization without calculating the flexibility and options it gave him by putting Bauer in Game 1. So when you really slow down and slice and dice it, you go, okay, I can understand that, but the but is, had they not won that game, there would have been more questions and more kind of stress on a team that's really the most complete team in the playoffs. And now you don't have to worry about it. So I give him a lot of credit for calculating it in the way that he did. And basically, Bauer dominated. And there's no way, when you think about following a performance like that, if you blind copy the statistics, you go, most people who woke up and go, wow, Kluber pitched a gem. And then you double check and go, that was Bauer. And now Kluber's going. Nice position for Cleveland to be in.
It is, and you mentioned, I'd like to expand on that thought. You mentioned the flexibility it gives him going forward. So now what does it do? Where does this series sit now with him sitting with Kluber in Game 2 and his team up 1-0?
Well, what it allowed him to do is get like Brantley on the roster for pinch hits. It allowed him to have flexibility of utilizing Bauer in Game 3, 4, or 5 out of the pen. Bauer's only going to make one start, and usually when you think about your Game 1 starter, that's guaranteed 2 starts. So it gives Kluber the normal rest on Game 2 and 5 if they have to go that way. And then it puts Kluber and Carrasco back-to-back. So as Terry put it, if we can't win 3 games before they do, then we weren't going to be good enough anyways. I think it puts the Cleveland Indians in a position now where their bullpen is more rested than it was last year because their starters are so good. And I know we're caught up in the analytical super penning and bullpenning, but I'm telling you, a team can't win the World Series unless their starters give them innings. You can have kind of isolated examples, like maybe the Royals of what they did, and much of last year the Indians almost did it, but they ran out of gas because they didn't have enough starters.
John, looking at the other AL series, Houston's offense has been dominant with the likely MVP, Jose Altuve. Chris Sale gets rocked. What do you make of that series, and are the Red Sox in trouble?
No, that's the thing that you got to be careful when you're in baseball in a 5-game series. The storyline shifts so quick. I've been part of so many, and as a player, you just can't. You know your team's good, and you get swayed so quickly by a performance that you may not have seen or you didn't think we're going to see. The Red Sox are really good. I just don't think that the Indians and Yankees or the Red Sox and Astros are going to be a quick series. I just don't. Even with the way the Indians are lined up. Joe Girardi today and John Farrell today have answers with the way that they can manipulate their bullpen and the starting staffs that they have. Now, Joe's going with a guy that, by the way, after his team loses, CeCe Sabathia is 9-0 on teams and games that he pitched. So CeCe's not going to be asked to go 5 innings, by the way. He's going to be asked to manipulate through the lineup maybe once and maybe see how far he can wiggle and then go right to the pen. So for the Yankees and their mindset, they know they can keep this game really close. They can utilize their bullpen with a day off. And I like both these series going, a little bit farther than what most people would think after Game 1's finished.
We'll find out today. Again, that's the Game 2 that they have on MLB Network. We've got the action of all 4 games here on ESPN Radio. And we always appreciate the time, John Smoltz. Thank you very much. Enjoy it.
Thanks, John.
All right, thanks, guys, for having me.
With John Smoltz with us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Get instant gold status at Shell. Join the Fuel Rewards program now at fuelrewards.com/gold.
Well, it's funny to hear him talk about the ebbs and flows of baseball, because a lot of people you talk in the sport say the same thing about don't ever get too high or ever get too low. You're only as good as your next day's starting pitcher. And I think in this sense, if you're the Yankees, how much confidence do you have in CC Sabathia? Because I think if he gets rocked early in the first or second inning, I think the Yankees could be in trouble. And I think that's the one series and the one starting pitcher that I would be a little leery of is CC Sabathia with the Yankees.
And you got to be awfully worried about what Kluber might go out there and do to them today. We shall see. Okay, much more to do, including Brian Billick, as we move along on this very busy Friday. We're back in just a moment on Mike and Mike. It just dawned on me I'm fidgeting around with this pencil a lot.
Why?
I don't know. I don't mean to. I don't feel nervous. Okay. I do have a lot of caffeine in me.
Well, that's what happens when you stay up half the night.
I wasn't up half the night. I was out of my usual routine because we had an event at the kids' school last night. And generally when we have nights like last night where we got all this baseball I got to see and I got the football game and everything else, I have a really good routine that I've worked out where I can see everything I need to see and still get all my sleep. But the event kind of threw me off. Mm-hmm. So I'm functioning on far less sleep. In fact, I believe I'm deserving of an enormous amount of credit and praise today that I'm not receiving for being as out of my routine as I am and still performing at the level at which I'm performing.
I'm not going to give you that much credit. I was taken aback this morning when we were sitting in the makeup chair.
Yeah.
And I looked to my left, and I've seen you get makeup before.
Yeah.
What bothered me or what really made me kind of, feel a certain type of way, you were getting your beard combed.
She brushes it. I didn't ask her to do it. She just
I know
does
it, but you look so comfortable with her doing it.
Oh, I love it. It feels good. You know what I noticed? That feels good enough that I realize now if you're a dog and someone scratches you and the dog loves it, I know now why it feels so good. Because if you scratch that little area, you have that little bit of beard, boy, that feels good. Feels very good.
So now you want somebody to scratch your face all the time?
Come scratch my face for me. Come on, Bugger. Just while we're sitting here and listening to Nick Saban talk, come scratch my cheeks. Okay. In the meantime, I wanted to play this soundbite. I've been trying to get to it all morning long because I just like it. Some people are just interesting.
Right.
You can like them or dislike them. I don't know Nick Saban from a hole in the wall. I mean, I've obviously met him many times. But I don't know that I can't tell you if I like him or don't like him, but I love listening to him talk for whatever reason. And yesterday he was talking about he's asked a question about the way football people's schedules have been disrupted because of weather, right? Because of hurricanes and all that kind of stuff. And whether that is a problem and whether that's something that his team has to deal with and all of that. And he came up with a story to explain why one must not allow one problem to snowball into another problem that is just so fabulous. Just sit back and enjoy. Here's Nick Saban.
You know, it's kind of like my dad used to tell me, when I used to go to work at the station, my girlfriend broke up with me, so I was treating the customers bad. And he said, "What's wrong with you today?" And I said, "My girlfriend broke up with me." He said, "Well, you got one problem, but if you keep treating the customers bad, you're going to have two more. I'm going to fire you, and then I'm going to whip your ass for getting fired. So you're not going to have a girlfriend, you're not going to have a job, and you're going to get your tail whipped." So whatever happened in the hurricane happened, and it's a bad thing, and we want to support everybody every way we can. And we certainly did that as much as we could. But if we don't go out there and play a good game, going to have all the problems that they had from the hurricane, and then we're going to have a problem that we lost.
What can you say? What can you say? I find the man fascinating. I don't know whether now you must know him better than I do.
Yeah.
I just find him fascinating.
Tremendous. What makes Nick Saban so good, he hates to lose more than he enjoys winning.
Yeah.
And so when you look at how he approaches every day, what he's talking about is mental toughness. That's basically all he's talking about right there, is having the mental toughness to realize that each event or incident that happens in your life, we're going to treat them individually, and we're not going to allow them to compound and group them all together as one. He's so good at that. And if you watch him coach, Greeny, how he coaches his football team, he's able to get the best out of them because his football teams, as we talk about on this show a lot, have taken that personality from him. He's great, and that soundbite is true. I've allowed, like when I was young, I lost my girlfriend. Prime example, Greeny, when you were young and you got your coat taken by the girl.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know why this had to turn into this, but yes.
No, but seriously.
I had my winter coat forcibly taken from me by a girl,
right.
Yes.
You could have pouted and allowed that to ruin your day.
Right.
But I guarantee you, somewhere in there, the mental fortitude of Mike Greenberg said, you know what? She can have it. I don't want it. I'll get another one, and I'm going to go on about my day.
Well, the first thing that happened was that I was cold. But I was going to make a serious point coming out of this, and instead you turned it into yet another opportunity to mock the Green Man. But if there's one thing, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but if there's one thing that I think I have done that is smart over my 30 years of covering sports,
right,
is that I've tried to learn these lessons.
Yep.
Like these guys are not just, he's coaching his team, but you can learn from the stuff that he says. And I've learned from the people I've been around, and that is a valuable lesson, because forgetting the joke about this, we all have problems that take place in our lives. And if you don't have the ability to compartmentalize and say, okay, that's bad, that's a bad thing, if I now allow it to bleed over into this other aspect of my life and make that bad, then that's on me. Yeah. Now I have two bad things going on. That doesn't make the other bad thing better. And that really is a good lesson. It's a valuable lesson that we all could have soaked in and enjoyed if you, Booger, didn't use it as an opportunity to poke fun at me.
I gave you credit for having mental toughness.
Yeah, but everybody knows that you're kidding about that, because no one is mentally weaker than me. We'll be right back.